Today, we'll be exploring qualitative data analysis through the lens of Braun and Clarke's approach. Their method focuses on identifying and exploring themes within complex qualitative data. This helps us to uncover deeper meanings and patterns, making sense of rich, detailed information. We'll look at how these themes can be developed and used to provide insightful interpretations. Understanding this process is key to effectively analyzing any qualitative dataset. Today, we'll be exploring qualitative data analysis with a particular focus on Braun and Clarke's approach to thematic analysis. Throughout this presentation, we will cover a range of important topics starting with an introduction to qualitative data analysis and what thematic analysis entails. We'll delve into Braun and Clarke's specific framework, examining both its philosophical foundations and practical applications, including when to use this method and how to prepare your data effectively. We'll walk through each of the 6 phases of thematic analysis in detail, from familiarization and coding to developing, reviewing, and naming themes, all the way to producing the final report. Additionally, we'll discuss different coding approaches, how to understand theme relationships, and the importance of reflexivity to ensure rigor and trustworthiness in your analysis. We'll also look at how qualitative data software can assist in this process, work through an example together, and address common challenges you might encounter. Finally, we'll review criteria for quality and the best ways to present your findings clearly and persuasively. This comprehensive overview sets the stage for a thorough understanding of qualitative data analysis using Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis framework. On this slide, we outline 3 key learning outcomes that reflect postgraduate level expectations for qualitative research competence. First, you will develop a nuanced understanding of thematic analysis, focusing on crucial concepts like coding, themes, and reflexivity. It's important to see thematic analysis not just as an introductory step, but as a comprehensive method in its own right. Next, you'll learn to apply Braun and Clarke's 6-phase framework for thematic analysis in a systematic and thoughtful way. This means moving beyond simple description to create rich, interpretative themes that meaningfully address your research questions. Remember, analysis is not linear, it's a recursive process where you continually move between your data, codes, themes, and theory. Finally, we emphasize the importance of analytical rigor. You will be expected to ensure your work demonstrates credibility, coherence, and transparency, while also reflecting on how your own perspective influences the analysis. Mastering these outcomes will prepare you to conduct independent qualitative research and confidently justify your methodological choices in your academic work. Qualitative data analysis is all about interpreting rich and complex data to really understand people's experiences and the social meanings behind them. Unlike quantitative methods, which focus on numbers and statistics, qualitative analysis dives deep into perceptions, social processes, and the ways people make sense of their world. It's especially useful for exploring how context and power influence experiences or how social phenomena develop over time. At the postgraduate level, this kind of analysis goes beyond just organizing data or summarizing what participants say. It requires critical thinking, theoretical sensitivity, and an awareness of how the researcher's own perspective influences the knowledge that's produced. Analysis isn't just a neutral task, it's shaped by our assumptions and position as researchers, so we need to carry it out transparently and thoughtfully. One popular approach within this broad qualitative landscape is thematic analysis. This method offers a flexible yet systematic way to identify patterns of meaning across data. It helps us engage deeply with the data while staying responsive to the context and research questions. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore how thematic analysis fits within qualitative research and why it's a valuable, rigorous tool for postgraduate study. Thematic analysis is a qualitative method used to identify and interpret patterns of meaning, or themes, within data. These themes capture important insights related to the research question and reflect repeated responses or ideas across the dataset. Importantly, it's not just about counting how often something appears, but understanding the significance behind it. One of the key strengths of thematic analysis is its flexibility. It can be applied across various theoretical frameworks and epistemological positions, whether realist, constructionist, or contextualist. This adaptability makes it well suited to a wide range of disciplines. However, this flexibility requires researchers to be clear and reflective about how and why they are using this method. Another crucial point is that thematic analysis is an active process. Themes don't just passively emerge from the data, they are constructed through the researcher's interpretation and analytical decisions. Recognizing this helps avoid common pitfalls, like producing themes that are merely descriptive without deeper analysis, ultimately leading to more meaningful and theory-informed findings. Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis framework is built around 6 interconnected phases that guide us from getting familiar with the data right through to producing the final analytical report. These phases include familiarizing ourselves with the data, generating initial codes, constructing themes, reviewing those themes, defining and naming them, and finally, producing a coherent report. What's important to note is that, although these phases are described in order, the process isn't rigid or linear. Instead, it encourages us to move back and forth between stages as our understanding deepens. This flexibility is particularly helpful for postgraduate researchers because it provides clear guidance without enforcing strict rules. Each phase comes with specific tasks, reflective questions, and quality checks, which helps maintain transparency and methodological rigor, both critical for solid research assessment. Another key aspect of the framework is its focus on reflexivity. It asks us to constantly reflect on our own assumptions, theoretical perspectives, and research objectives, and how these influence the analysis. Braun and Clarke also warn against using the framework like a simple checklist. Rather, it should be seen as a flexible tool that supports a thorough and thoughtful approach. When used well, it allows us to generate themes that are coherent, distinct, and deeply insightful, ultimately enriching the knowledge in our field. Thematic analysis is quite versatile because it can be framed within different philosophical perspectives, and understanding these is key for conducting thorough postgraduate research. One approach is the realist perspective, which assumes that participants' language reflects their actual experiences and reality. Here, the focus is on presenting these experiences as directly as they are expressed. On the other hand, the constructionist approach challenges this straightforward link by exploring how meanings and realities are shaped through social interactions, language, discourse, and power dynamics. In this view, themes are not fixed reflections of a singular reality but are understood as socially constructed and influenced by context as well as interpretation. Then we have the contextualist position, which offers a middle path by recognizing both individual experiences and the influence of larger social structures when analyzing themes. For researchers, especially at postgraduate level, it's essential to clearly state which philosophical stance informs their analysis because it shapes how data are interpreted and what is identified as a theme. Being consistent and reflective about these foundations enhances the credibility and coherence of the research. So, keeping these theoretical perspectives in mind throughout thematic analysis is crucial for robust and meaningful findings. Thematic analysis is incredibly versatile, which is one of its greatest strengths. It can be applied to a wide variety of qualitative data sources, including interviews, focus groups, surveys, documents, and even multimedia content. This makes it a highly flexible method suitable for many research contexts. It's particularly useful in exploratory studies, where there's limited existing theory and the goal is to uncover perceptions, experiences, meanings, or practices from the participant's point of view. This method supports both descriptive and interpretative analysis, helping researchers to delve deep into the data. However, it's important to remember that thematic analysis isn't appropriate for every research question. For example, if your study focuses on the detailed use of language, you might need to consider discourse or conversation analysis instead. For postgraduate researchers, justifying the use of thematic analysis is crucial. You need to clearly explain how it fits with your research questions, theoretical framework, and data type. This shows you've thought carefully about your method and are using it purposefully, rather than by default. Mastering when and why to use thematic analysis is an essential part of demonstrating your competence in qualitative research. Data preparation is a crucial stage in qualitative analysis that often doesn't get the attention it deserves. It starts with accurate transcription, which means converting audio or visual material into a detailed written form. This step is vital because the quality of your transcription directly affects the insights you can draw later. You also need to decide how much detail to include, such as pauses, emphasis, or nonverbal cues, depending on your research needs. Next, ethical anonymization is essential to protect participants' confidentiality. This involves removing any identifying information like names or locations, especially if your research is subject to ethical review. This step safeguards privacy and ensures your work meets ethical research standards. Systematic organization of your data is another key part of preparation. This means properly labeling and securely storing your files so they're easy to access and ready to be used in qualitative analysis software if necessary. A well-organized dataset prevents confusion and supports a more efficient analytical process. Finally, early familiarization with your data plays a big role. By engaging with the material from the outset, listening to recordings, reading transcripts, and noting initial impressions, you build a strong foundation for deeper, more nuanced analysis. Overall, thorough data preparation boosts the rigor and quality of your analysis, helping to avoid superficial or fragmented conclusions later on. Phase 1 of Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis framework centers on familiarization with the data, which is absolutely foundational to producing a rigorous analysis. At this stage, researchers immerse themselves deeply in the dataset by reading and rereading transcripts, listening to audio recordings, and reviewing any field notes. This immersive engagement helps develop a comprehensive understanding of both the content and the context, as well as the subtle nuances within the data. As you work through the data, it's important to make initial notes and jot down observations. These early thoughts aren't formal codes but more like tentative ideas or emerging patterns that link the raw data to the later stages of analysis. This process acts as a bridge, guiding you gently from raw material towards a more structured interpretative approach. Equally important during this phase is reflexive thinking. It means being mindful of your own perspectives, biases, and preconceptions, and considering how these might influence what you notice or prioritize in the data. This self-awareness helps to keep the analysis balanced and grounded. Crucially, familiarization isn't a step to rush through. Skipping or superficially engaging with the data risks premature coding, which can lead to fragmented or weak thematic development. Braun and Clarke stress the importance of thorough, patient engagement with the full dataset, ensuring that themes emerge naturally and coherently from a solid understanding of all the information collected. Phase 2 is all about generating initial codes. These are concise labels we apply to parts of the data that are relevant to our research question. Think of coding as a way to systematically work through your entire dataset, making sure no important detail is overlooked. Depending on your approach, codes might capture what is explicitly said, the surface meanings, or they might dig deeper into underlying ideas and assumptions. According to Braun and Clarke, semantic coding focuses on what is directly expressed, while latent coding looks beneath the surface to the implicit meanings. You can also approach coding in different ways: inductively, where the codes emerge from the data itself, or deductively, where they are shaped by existing theories or previous research. It's crucial to be clear about which approach you're using and to align it with your overall research perspective. Remember, coding isn't the final step. It's a tool to organize your data for the next phases of analysis. It's important to code inclusively, preserving enough context around each data extract. If codes are too narrow or taken out of context, it can make developing meaningful themes more difficult later on. This phase demands careful judgment, ongoing reflexivity, and a structured process to build a strong foundation for your analysis. In Phase 3, we transition from simply coding the data to constructing more meaningful themes. This means combining individual codes into broader interpretative stories that capture key patterns and insights related to the research question. It's important to note that themes are not just clusters of similar codes, they represent deeper narratives that help us understand the data's significance. At this stage, the analysis becomes very active. We compare codes, explore relationships between them, and think about how different parts of the dataset connect. Visual tools like thematic maps or tables can be really useful for seeing how themes might fit together. Not every code will necessarily become part of a theme. Some may be reworked into subthemes, while others might be set aside if they don't contribute meaningfully. The goal is to create themes that are coherent and relevant, with a clear central idea supported by strong evidence from the data. This phase marks a shift towards true interpretative analysis. We move beyond just describing the data to exploring its meaning, significance, and what it implies for our research. It's where our findings start to take shape as insightful stories grounded in rigorous analysis. In Phase 4, we focus on reviewing and refining the themes we've identified to ensure they are both coherent and meaningful. Firstly, we look within each theme at the data extracts we've coded, checking for internal consistency to make sure everything fits well together. Then, we step back and evaluate the themes against the entire dataset, confirming that they accurately represent the broader picture of our data. During this process, it's common to find that some themes are too broad, overlap with others, or don't have enough supporting evidence. When this happens, we may split a theme into smaller parts, merge similar themes, or sometimes discard those that just don't hold up. This refining stage is crucial because it helps to sharpen the distinctiveness and clarity of our themes, making our analysis stronger. This phase also highlights the analytical rigor needed in research, especially at postgraduate level. It involves careful judgment and often requires revisiting earlier steps in the analysis, illustrating the recursive nature of thematic analysis. By thoroughly reviewing and refining the themes, we enhance the credibility and trustworthiness of our final findings. In Phase 5, we focus on defining and naming themes in a way that clearly captures their essence and analytical significance. Defining a theme means explaining what makes it unique and important, how it connects to the research question, and how it fits within the broader thematic framework. This usually involves writing detailed descriptions and fine-tuning the boundaries between themes to avoid overlaps or confusion. When it comes to naming themes, this is a crucial part of the analysis. Theme names need to be concise yet evocative, providing an informative snapshot of what the theme is about. Names that are too vague or overly detailed can dilute the impact of your findings. Braun and Clarke suggest thinking of themes as chapters in a story that the data tells, each one contributing to the unfolding narrative. For postgraduate researchers, getting this phase right is essential. Clearly defined and well-named themes not only make the findings easier to understand but also lend coherence and sophistication to your final report. This lays a strong foundation for presenting your analysis effectively. In this final phase of thematic analysis, we focus on producing the analytical report. This is where we present and interpret the themes we've identified, linking them clearly back to our research questions and the existing literature. Importantly, this isn't just about describing the themes but weaving an analytical narrative that deepens our understanding of the phenomenon we're studying. We make use of data extracts here as well. These are carefully selected pieces of evidence that support our analysis. They help demonstrate the points we're making, but they must be contextualized and integrated into the argument. It's crucial that the researcher's interpretation remains at the heart of the report. Relying too heavily on quotations without sufficient explanation can actually weaken the overall analysis. For postgraduate researchers, it's especially important that the report shows clear coherence throughout. The research questions, methodology, analysis, and conclusions all need to align seamlessly. According to Braun and Clarke, strong thematic analysis tells a compelling and credible story about the data, grounded in rigorous and methodical analytical practice. This coherence and rigor underpin the credibility of your findings and the strength of your report. When it comes to coding in thematic analysis, we can take different approaches based on our research goals and theoretical stance. Inductive coding is all about letting the codes emerge naturally from the data itself, without trying to fit it into pre-existing categories. On the other hand, deductive coding starts with a framework or specific questions, so the analysis is guided by established concepts. We also need to consider the difference between semantic and latent coding. Semantic coding deals with the explicit content, what participants are actually saying on the surface. Latent coding digs deeper, looking for the underlying meanings, assumptions, or ideologies that might be present but not directly stated. This latent approach involves more interpretation and requires us to engage thoughtfully with the theoretical context. As researchers, especially at the postgraduate level, It's crucial to make these decisions carefully and be transparent about why and how we choose our coding strategies. Sometimes combining both inductive and deductive methods can be effective, but this needs to be clearly justified to ensure the analysis remains coherent and methodologically sound. When developing themes, it's important not only to identify each individual theme but also to explore the relationships between them. Themes can be organized in a hierarchy, with main themes and subthemes, or they can be connected relationally to illustrate how different parts of the data interact. This kind of organization deepens the analysis and reveals more complex insights. One helpful tool in this process is the use of thematic maps. These visual tools illustrate how themes connect, making it easier to see if the themes together tell a clear and coherent story. They also help you spot any gaps or underdeveloped areas in your analysis. For postgraduate students, paying close attention to these theme relationships is crucial as it shows advanced analytical thinking. It moves your work beyond just listing findings, creating a richer, more integrated interpretation that captures the subtlety and complexity within your data. This approach really elevates the quality of your research analysis. Reflexivity is fundamental to Braun and Clarke's approach to thematic analysis. It means actively reflecting on how my own background, assumptions, values, and position influence every stage of the research and the conclusions I draw. Instead of pretending to be completely objective, reflexivity recognizes that I am an active participant in creating knowledge. I demonstrate reflexivity through keeping reflective notes, explaining my methodological choices, and being transparent about the decisions I make during analysis. It also requires me to be aware of the power dynamics between myself and the participants, understanding how these can affect the data collection and interpretation. For postgraduate researchers, practicing reflexivity is not just a technical requirement, but a sign of ethical responsibility and methodological maturity. By engaging reflexively, I enhance the credibility and trustworthiness of my work and ensure it meets contemporary standards for qualitative research. When we talk about trustworthiness in qualitative research, we're focusing on the quality and integrity of the entire analytical process. This means addressing key criteria like credibility, dependability, confirmability, and transferability. Essentially, researchers need to show that their analysis is done in a systematic, transparent way, supported by solid evidence. In thematic analysis specifically, maintaining rigor requires clear documentation of every step taken during analysis, along with a reflexive approach that engages deeply with the data. This isn't about applying quantitative ideas of reliability and validity blindly. As Braun and Clarke remind us, rigor comes from ensuring coherence between your research questions, your chosen methodology, and your analysis, all supported by rich, compelling evidence. For postgraduate researchers, demonstrating this trustworthiness is crucial not only for successful thesis examination but also for making a meaningful contribution through publication. Engaging thoughtfully with these quality criteria strengthens the scholarly value and impact of your qualitative findings. When we talk about qualitative data analysis software, tools like NVivo, Atlas.t, and Maxdata come to mind. These programs are incredibly helpful for managing data. They assist with organizing, coding, and retrieving information, which is especially important when dealing with large datasets. One of the key advantages is that they help improve efficiency and create a clear audit trail, making it easier to track your analytical decisions. However, it's important to remember that these tools don't do the analysis for you. Critical thinking and deep engagement with your data remain essential. The software is there to support your work, not to replace the thoughtful interpretation that only a researcher can provide. Choosing the right software involves considering your specific research needs and the size of your project. Sometimes, manual analysis might be more suitable, particularly for smaller datasets. Ultimately, the real insight comes from how you interact with your data, not just from the technology you use. Here, we have a worked example that takes us through the process of thematic analysis, starting from the raw data and moving through to the final themes. It all begins with extracting data and generating initial codes. These codes are essentially labels that capture significant features within the data. Next, we look for patterns among these codes, grouping them into potential themes that represent meaningful concepts. An important point to emphasize is that themes don't just emerge naturally from the data. Rather, they are actively constructed through interpretation, which means we need to remain reflexive, constantly reflecting on our own influence in the analysis and being transparent about the decisions we make along the way. For postgraduate students, this kind of worked example is invaluable. It bridges the gap between theory and practice by showing exactly how to apply Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis framework in real research situations, helping to build confidence and understanding throughout the process. When conducting thematic analysis, there are a few common challenges that we need to be aware of. One of these is overcoding, which means creating too many themes that are quite weak or superficial. This often happens when we haven't spent enough time familiarizing ourselves with the data or when we lack a clear theoretical framework to guide our analysis. Another key issue is approaching thematic analysis in a purely mechanical way. If we treat it like a step-by-step process without interpretation, the analysis can become fragmented and shallow, missing the depth that truly insightful work requires. Braun and Clarke highlight the need to embrace complexity and uncertainty, rather than avoiding them. To improve the quality and depth of our analysis, it's helpful to use strategies like reflexive note-taking, where we constantly reflect on our process and assumptions, peer discussions, which offer alternative perspectives, and iterative reviews, revisiting the data and themes multiple times. These approaches help us move beyond a descriptive summary to produce a richer, more meaningful analysis. When we talk about quality criteria for thematic analysis, there are 4 key aspects to keep in mind: coherence, transparency, reflexivity, and contribution. First, coherence is all about making sure there's a logical connection between your research questions, the data you've collected, and the way you analyze it. This ensures your results are meaningful and grounded in your initial aims. Next, transparency means documenting your analytic decisions clearly throughout the process. This not only helps others understand how you arrived at your conclusions but also makes your study reproducible. Reflexivity is especially important. It involves you, as the researcher, being aware of and reflecting on your own role and how your perspective might influence the research. This adds depth and integrity to your analysis. Lastly, contribution assesses how much new understanding or insights your thematic analysis provides, which is crucial for advancing knowledge in your field. Together, these criteria go beyond just ticking procedural boxes. They focus on the overall integrity and scholarly value of your research. For postgraduate students, engaging with these quality markers is a powerful way to critically evaluate your own work and enhance its academic impact. When reporting and presenting your findings, it's crucial to introduce your themes clearly, providing explanatory text that helps your audience understand their significance. Supporting these themes with relevant data extracts really brings them to life and keeps readers engaged. It's also important to strike the right balance between including participant quotations and providing your own analytical interpretation. The quotations should support your analysis, not replace it, so your argument remains rigorous and insightful. Maintaining a coherent narrative structure with clear signposting is key to helping your readers follow the flow of your analysis smoothly. Visual aids, like thematic maps, can also be incredibly useful for enhancing clarity. For postgraduate research, presenting your findings effectively isn't just about clarity, it's about demonstrating the rigor and value of your work to examiners, supervisors, and the wider academic community. This level of reporting ensures your research makes the strong impression it deserves. Let's focus on the key takeaways from our discussion on thematic analysis. First, it's important to understand that thematic analysis provides a structured 6-phase framework that balances flexibility with rigor, guiding us through qualitative data analysis in a clear and manageable way. Next, researcher reflexivity is crucial. We must maintain an awareness of our own influence on the research process and ensure that our analytical decisions are transparent. This reflexivity helps maintain the integrity of our findings and acknowledges the researcher's role in shaping the analysis. When it comes to theme construction, themes aren't simply found, they are actively created through careful interpretation. These themes need to be coherent and must be supported by strong, compelling evidence drawn from the data. Finally, mastering thematic analysis offers significant benefits, especially for postgraduate researchers. It not only sharpens research skills but also strengthens the ability to produce methodologically sound and richly analytical qualitative studies. Overall, thematic analysis is a powerful tool that, when used thoughtfully, greatly enhances the quality of qualitative research. Here we have some key references and suggested readings that are foundational for understanding and applying thematic analysis in qualitative research. Braun and Clarke's work is essential, offering detailed methodological guidance and helping clarify the theoretical underpinnings of this approach. It's important to engage with these texts to grasp the nuances of thematic analysis fully. Alongside that, the work of Lincoln and Guber provides critical insights into qualitative rigor, addressing important concepts like trustworthiness and quality which are crucial for any qualitative study. These texts help ensure that our research maintains high standards. I encourage you all to approach these readings with a critical mindset. Engaging actively and thoughtfully with this literature will refine your analytical choices and strengthen your research skills. Ultimately, a strong familiarity with these references will equip you with the confidence and expertise to apply thematic analysis effectively and contribute meaningfully to qualitative scholarship in your field.